Hello and welcome to Psychological Insights. The topic of the month is love. It's the second time we've had love as the main topic, and maybe love is in the air, but what's this preoccupation with love? Why 2 sessions on love and only 1 session on mañana? Is there something special about this love? I'm Pat Kazakoff. You're watching Psychological Insights. Stay with me as we speak to Dr. Robert Hamm, a psychologist from West Hartford. What is this thing we call love? Why is this why are we having 2 sessions on this topic?
Well, I mean, I think, we want to find things to talk about, right?
But is there enough material in love? Is there enough material to talk about that we're devoting so many sessions to it?
Yeah, well, I think that really the question in my mind is why is it that our interest in love is boundless and endless? We could be talking about it forever. And I mean, it's the topic of just about every song that's ever been written and every movie and book. And so it's boundless. So just 2 topics, we're just getting started.
What about the last month we talked about the Greeks' definition of love, and you had about 8 different types of love, with passionate love called eros as the number 1. Why is passion the number 1?
It was number 1? Well,
it was number 1, yes. You said that passion fuels love, that you have to have an element of passion, of romantic love, in order to start the process.
Well, I mean, passion in a romantic relationship, yes. I mean, there are many kinds of relationships, of course. Not all of them are passionate. I mean, a business relationship is usually not a passionate one. It's probably wise not to mix the 2, isn't it?
Well, what you said was that passion fuels the love, and it's the first pillar. You described love as having 3 pillars, with passion being number 1.
Right. So, I mean, I think there's a little confusion here in my other TV show topic, Love and Dimension. I talk about, the Greeks said that there's 8 different kinds, which I think is wonderful that they were able to delineate that. It helps us all to be a little bit clearer and think about how we want to devote ourselves to a relationship. Not every relationship has passion or eros in it, of course. It's one kind of relationship. But when there is eros, when there's passion and romance, it's something that is very confusing and it's fascinating at the same time. But in order for the topic of today's program, the 3 pillars of a romantic love, from infatuation to a lasting relationship, when we go beyond answering the question, what is love? Most of us want to know, how can we make it last? We want to make it last.
Well, before we talk about making it last, does everybody feel you describe in your blog that love is this kind of mania? There's a confused state, and it's manic, and it makes you crazy. Does everyone in their life experience that kind of love?
I can't answer that question. Do you know people that have not experienced that kind of love?
I know people who have expressed to me, how do you know that you're in love? And that the implication of that is that they haven't ever been in love.
Sometimes a narcissist, perhaps, someone who's so self-centered, the only person that they're in love with is themselves. They cannot love anyone else. They cannot fall in love.
Taking that a bit further, where is that love feeling coming from? Like, is it coming from when you were born? Is it coming from your family? Like, how do you get that feeling of love?
A very good question. I talk about this in the blog that this show is spins off of. It's a combination of different things, Pat. I think it's partly in our culture. Um, there's a philosopher, a Swiss philosopher, his name is Alain de Botton, a very good philosopher. He's contemporary, and he has a series of YouTubes and books. And one of them is called The Course on Love. And he claims that our feeling of being in love comes from the period of Romanticism in the 18th century in Europe, where people were writing about, the romantic movement, about these longings and this emotional state of being. Others people say came from the Middle Ages with the troubadours. It came from the East. But I believe that more deeply, it's a combination of our hormones and how we are made as human beings to bond emotionally. So when we fall in love, our physiology gets activated with and produces a lot of testosterone, which is the sex drive, aggression, and oxytocin, which is the love drug, that we produce hormonally. But I think it's much more complicated. It has to do, I think, it comes from what happens in my mind, and I can only speculate, but I believe what happens is that when we see somebody and there is some kind of attraction, those hormones get activated. And when those hormones get activated, ones I just mentioned, this is not too academic, I hope.
No, hormones is not academic at all. I mean, either you have the hormone or you don't have the hormone.
All right. Bear with me. So there's a very close link, Pat, between our emotional part of our brain, the limbic system, and our memories, the hippocampus, okay, and the substructures of the brain. So I believe what happens is when those hormones get activated, what gets innervated in our brain is deep memories from long, long ago in our childhood, even before we even set down memories, before our brains were formed enough for us to remember things, but they're there.
So
pre-verbal memory.
So what about, how does, there's a lot of jokes about the mother figure in all this. How does the mother figure in this equation?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Bear with me.
Sorry. I'm back in the limbic system and the hippocampus. Yes.
Right. So I think what happens, these hormones, they're very closely, what they do is they link up our emotional part of our brain with our early memories that are pre-verbal, way back to the mother-child, mother-infant bond. And those memories, although we don't remember when we were infants, they're there. And what is that? That's when there is this exhilaration between mother and child, that you are the center of the world, and this is your caretaker. This is the one who's going to take care of you, who loves you unconditionally. You are the center of the world. So what we have here is love, passion, a very passionate, deep bond, and affirmation of ourselves. And that's what being in love is all about. We find somebody, we have a longing for them, but we also want to be desired in return. We want that to be reciprocated. That affirms ourselves as that baby feels with its mother, that I'm worthy, that I am loved. And I think this is what happens when we fall in love. Those hormones, I believe, activate those very deep recesses of our brain that remembers that experience that was so exhilarating through association.
So how do you explain, I'm not going to debunk Dr. Hamm, I'm not going to debunk that theory, but how do you explain people, let's say you have a mother and she has 3 children or 2 children, And one child is a love machine. Like he's in love all the time. He's a passionate soul. And the other child is not. They both have the same mother. They both were brought up with the same stimuli, but just at different times. Did the mother just love this one child and not the other? Did she not affirm both children? Well, like, how do you explain the difference in the children towards love?
Um, well, it's really hard for me to answer that question because there could be many different explanations for it. And I don't mean to sort of sidestep answering your question, but I can tell you that and a lot of people ask the same question. Why is it that my one child is this way and my other child is the opposite? They have the same parents. Well, obviously, who we are is a function of more than just our genetic makeup, even though they share, a lot of their genes because they're siblings. A lot of it has to do with how we're raised and our birth order and how we're treated, our personalities, our temperament that may be different. Even twins, have different experiences in life, partly because they come as twins. So even though they share identical genetic information, they want to develop separate identities, and those efforts to do so creates different experiences in life. So there's so many different factors. A parent could be in a different place emotionally when one child is born than when another child was born.
So it's not just the mother. We can't just blame the mother.
The mother is always, our target, isn't it? I mean, it's a cliche in psychology.
Right. That's why I'm asking it.
And there is validity to it, but it certainly is not the entire explanation by any means. There's so many different factors. A lot of it is what we're born with, our temperament.
So nature versus nurture.
Nature and nurture, yes.
Right.
Yep.
So we're talking about romantic love, and we don't have a really good answer as to where these feelings of love come from, because there's so many if, ands, and buts, and this hypothalamus, it's a hypothalamus?
Hippocampus.
The hippocampus. The
Right.
hippocampus has a lot of stuff going on there. It's not just a linear equation in that brain. So you're in love, you fall in love. More often than not, it falls apart. Why? Why does it fall apart?
There could be different explanations for that, but I think that often when we fall in love, we're blinded, as the cliche goes. We're looking for that eternal experience of unconditional love and passion. But in order for a relationship to work, obviously, we have to be mentally and emotionally equipped. So if you're young and relatively inexperienced in life, you're susceptible. If you live in a culture that extols passion as a way to bond, you are likely to idealize a relationship and therefore become misled about, your partner. So many people choose partners in hoping that maybe they can change them, or not realizing that the things that they love about them is a double-edged sword. That if you fall in love with someone, let's say, who's very, let's say, even-keeled and mild in temper, you might find them boring in the long run if you're with them a lot. Or someone who's very charismatic and very attractive, you may find them to be unreliable because of the all of that goes with that kind of personality.
Are you telling me I'm unreliable? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I hadn't thought of that. I wasn't thinking of you, but yeah, you are charismatic, so I'll grant you that. Okay.
So then the love equation falls apart. It falls apart because you didn't get what you expected, or what you expected isn't the truth. You were so blinded by love that you really didn't see the truth.
Yeah, well, this is what the philosopher Alain de Botton talks about in his course on love, how romanticism misleads people in, to, uh, into finding that they're not getting what they had expected because we idealize. Now, also, sometimes people, it isn't just a lack of experience. Some people never get it. You know, they're like you asked the question, some people live falling in love all the time. That's not necessarily a good thing. If you cannot form a lasting relationship, there may be characterological aspects about that person that prevents them from being able to move beyond that passion stage and to be able to see a person and accept a person in greater dimension. Well, you know,
So,
we have to accept the bad with the good. Yeah.
so what, there's a lot of young people watching this show. What, how do you prevent someone who is in love from not seeing the lie? You're in love with something that doesn't make sense, but you're in love. How do you get rid of that 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 unrealism that's in your brain?
Programs like this help, I would hope. How to, transcend infatuation into developing a lasting relationship. So when passion is what makes the world go around. It's what inspires people to become close to other people in many instances. It's the inspiration for many songs, as we know, and poetry and stories. But we need more than that if we want something that's lasting. And what is that? That's where the 8 different dimensions of love that I talk about in my Love and Dimension show comes in. Friendship, what it takes. You have to be reliable and honest, and you have to be devoted. A certain degree of playfulness and lightheartedness, so it's not all hard work. And a certain degree of commitment. Um, it's like a partnership. In some ways, if you're married, it's almost like a business. You're running, so, like a business. You have to realize that it takes work, compassion.
So basically what you have to do is work at it. There is an element of working at it, of
Oh, absolutely.
recognizing that this passionate phase is a phase, and if you want it to continue the relationship, you gotta work at the other things. You gotta work at respect. You gotta work at compassion. You gotta work at reliability. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
You also have to, in a long-term relationship, a lot of relationships die out. Passion fades because passion is transitory. So you also have to work at keeping the passion going. You have to have date nights. If you have children, especially, they can really squelch the passion in a relationship. But also, this topic today is the 3 pillars. So there's passion, there's love and dimension, as I said, that keeps the relationship going. But there's also the 3rd pillar is respect that you mentioned. And that's something that is not usually discussed when we talk about romantic love. So Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love includes passion, intimacy, and commitment, but I add another dimension. I call it respect. And this, again, as does passion, I believe, comes from that mother-infant dyad. When we fall in love with our mother as infants, part of that falling in love is being affirmed that we're good enough, that we're loved. And being in love and being in a loving relationship also requires that we feel that we are respected by our partners and that we give our partners respect. We need affirmation in order to feel that sense of self-esteem and valued, but we also have to grow in dimension so that affirmation, that self-affirmation, is not just a kind of a narcissistic, oh,
What ex- What exactly are you calling affirmation? Like, how are you defining affirmation?
That's where our self-esteem comes from. Self-affirmation means that I think that you are attractive. I think that you are an intelligent. I think that you are worthy. You're a valued person. That's affirmation. That's where self-esteem comes from. But if it remains in an immature state, that's narcissism. Just I want to be the best. I want to be the center of attention. That's affirmation, but it's a narcissistic. In order for a relationship to work, we also have to grow in dimension with regard to ourselves, so that affirmation is not founded on being the center of attention or always being the best, but rather on character, on our good qualities such as responsibility and integrity, uh, that we are valued and affirmed for traits, characteristics that are healthy for a relationship to work.
So would it be unrealistic? Now tell me the truth. Tell me the truth on this one. Would it be unrealistic to expect a passionate kind of love in a long-term marriage? Would that be unrealistic?
No, it's not unrealistic. I'm not saying it's easy. As I was saying, you have to work at it. And many long-term relationships no longer have passion. So Robert Sternberg calls that empty love. So you might have two people, they stay together because they have children or they have finances or they just have friends. They have a life they share. There isn't the passion and it works for them, but they don't have the passion. But in order to have that complete feeling of what Sternberg calls consummate love, the triangle, the passion, the commitment, and the intimacy, the closeness is the most fulfilling kind. Not everybody has it. You don't have to have all three to have a lasting relationship. But if you want a romantic relationship, passion has to be a part of it. Yes.
So before you said something that was very interesting to me when we talked about the mother. You know, she figures prominently in all these discussions. Is that the syndrome that you see young men marrying women who remind them of their mother? You know, they look like their mother, they act like their mother. And you'll hear people say, oh, you married your mother. It's a little joke, but it's not
Yeah.
such a funny joke. Is that what that's about?
Absolutely. There's a lot of truth to it. As I said, that mother-infant bond is something that even if we don't remember those memories because they're deep in early childhood, they're there. They have a guiding influence that we want that affirmation. We're looking for that feeling of being, I want to be, the center of your world. It creates a feeling of feeling good, feeling secure, feeling loved. In passion, it's exhilarating. It's addictive. And it starts with the mother. Absolutely. I believe that. Yep. So it is kind of funny. It's an old joke, but for better or worse, there's a lot of truth to it.
So talking about truth, would you say, I mean, you have a lot of men who marry their mothers, and they marry their, but you have a lot of men who don't marry their mothers. In fact, they marry the opposite of their mothers. What does that say about those men who aren't marrying their mothers? Does it say they're not affirmed? Does it say they didn't get from their mother what they wanted? What does it say about those men?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think if someone marries someone who's not like their mother, in some instances anyway, it may mean that it's an unhappy relationship.
If they marry someone who's not like their mother?
Well, I'm just speculating in at least one explanation. I can't speak for all of it. It's a good question, and there may be different answers for different people. But I think in one instance that I can think of, some people may marry someone who's different from their mother because they had a troubled or bad relationship, and they were able to learn that that's really a bad idea. It's best to marry someone who doesn't have those qualities that were created a tragic relationship or a difficult one.
So it's a healthy response then.
It could be. I mean, I can't really answer that question for everyone. It's a good question. give it some more thought. But that would be one way to explain it. There are people who, marry their mothers tragically, that they're looking for someone who has qualities like their mother, and if that relationship is problematic, then they find themselves in the same situation. They don't know how they got there. They kind of blindly go into it, but they're looking for their mothers, trying to work out their problems, hoping that it will be different. So marrying your mother is not necessarily a good thing, as we know. It's a double-edged sword. You may find things that you're in love with, but if you don't realize that, for every quality that we're attracted to, there's another side to it.
You talked about the three pillars.
Right.
And you didn't have to work at romantic love because that was involved with the oxycontin and the oxytocin, sorry, the oxytocin and the
Right, it's a different
hypothalamus.
drug, isn't it?
Right, it's a different drug. But what about, like, you have to be committed to working at a relationship in order to have it work. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, I mean, I would assume that you know from experience that's necessary, don't you? I mean, you have to. That's where the 8 dimensions of love that the Greeks introduced, I think, is so informative, so helpful. Uh, to realize that to make a relationship work, you have to transcend passion that blinds you. When the dust settles in a relationship and the passion tamps down, which it eventually does, you get to know the real person there, and you have to weather the storm and the difficulties in being with that person if you want something that works, don't you?
So what about people who are in married relationships? And you mentioned that there's a lot of people in married relationships, but are not in passionate relationships. But for other reasons, it works. You say you have family, you have children, you have a lifestyle, you have friends, and it works. So what about people who stray from those relationships? They're sort of constant malingerers. They're constantly in love with somebody who is not their mate. How does that work? Like they're just going after everybody. They're looking for love in all the wrong places.
Well, it's hard to answer that question for everyone, but I mean, I think that's a solution for some people. Um, and if they don't have that kind of passion in their relationship and they don't want to work at it, they've given up. They feel they're stuck with that person, but it works in so many ways. And I've seen it happen a lot in my work with patients, couples, that they have really good relationships, a really great friendship, but no passion. And so for some people, the solution is to have affairs. To me, that's really a bad idea, unless your partner knows about it and agrees to it. Otherwise, there's betrayal. And that, is, a tragic thing in a relationship. I mean, some cultures sanction it. It's not sanctioned in our culture. I think that any time that you do something secretively, that's a betrayal. It's a very damaging thing, whether or not you have passion in the relationship. When you go behind someone's back in something like that that's intimate, it's very destructive.
Is there anything else you want to talk to me about or you want to tell me that we haven't alighted on in this conversation about this topic?
Well, I think that, talking about this is easy, but doing it is difficult. It does take a lot of work to make a passionate relationship lasting. It may not be for everybody, but it's worth it, giving the effort. I think that we all want something that we love and feel passionate about to be lasting. So it does take a certain level. You have to have a level of understanding. And some people don't. They have defenses, they have trauma, and that's where therapy can come in. If there are characterological problems about a person that prevents them from seeing their own difficulties, they can tragically go from one relationship to the next, finding themselves in the same pattern, not knowing why. And that's, where my role comes in as a psychologist. I can work with people to help them to see their defenses and see those patterns and understand themselves, make connections from their childhoods so that they can transcend that and not make the same mistakes over and over again.
I've been talking to Dr. Robert Hamm. We've been talking about love and all the different angles of it. And I guess in the end, you can say it's really, really complicated, and that you still have to work at it, that romantic love is only one element, but it's not the only element. And you can have a satisfying relationship without passion, but you can't have a satisfying relationship unless you're conscious of respect, you're conscious of compassion, you're consciously working at having a relationship. I'm Pat Kazakoff. Thank you very much, Dr. Hamm. And we'll see you next month.
Okay. All right.